We'll open it up with Mark Larson.
Hey, John. Wanted to talk to you about, where I asked your players this too, but where this team is right now. 4-3 on the year. Certainly, I don't think what you guys expected to be. So how are you dealing with that, and how do you expect them to kind of respond to that?
I know that they've talked about it as a group, and we've talked a little bit about it. It's just been frustrating with the lack of possessions. Last game especially. Duke were able to play through it, and last game, early in the game, I think that they had some turnovers. We kind of fooled ourselves with the 6-1 lead, and then we didn't see the ball, and they give up 9 goals in the second quarter was pretty frustrating. And I think in the fourth quarter, we only had 4 possessions at the offensive end of the field. So I'm a little concerned with that. That's why I saw Jack Savage come in. We talked about redshirting him. He gave us 6 for 17 and was on a couple more of them. So we're just going to see how it goes from here on out. Who has the hot hand, and a lot of times it's a matchup issue. So I think the team's frustrated. You have to learn how to play when you don't have possessions. You got to be extremely efficient offensively, and defensively, you just have to get those stops. And all of a sudden, every clear, every ground ball becomes very important because you need to get that ball to your offense. So I think the attitude's good. We think we're a good team. But you got to have the ball to score, and we're spending a lot of time with that right now.
Given that, were those expectations too high coming in?
Well, the Ivy League's really hurting us this year, Mark. We go against Duke, and Sowers transfers in from Princeton, and then we go against Notre Dame, and Gallagher comes in from Penn. So the Ivies are hurting us, but we're going to come to play. We're going to give it our best shot, and we're going to try to get through our possession woes at this time.
Next, we go to Mark Singalis.
Hey, John. What differences do you see in Albany's offense with Nanacoke no longer there?
They're doing okay. We haven't. We're really focusing on the last film. Without him there, because we wanted to see what the difference is, especially for our defensive coordinator to watch their offense. And it's a good group. And Patterson and Tucker and Hogue have picked up the slack a little bit, and the middies are playing well. Got a couple good wins. So we're just trying to focus on them right now, get to know who they are, and value our possessions, try to win some faceoffs, and play better defense than we did a week ago. But they're a good group. They obviously love transition. They're a little bit of a freelancing group offensively, so it makes them harder to pick up their tendencies. But we've got to come ready to play.
Just to follow up, John, just Stephen Rafa, since he's a hometown guy. Has he surpassed the expectations you had for him when you brought him in from Holy Cross, all those years ago?
Yes, yeah, I'd say so. He's playing really well, all aspects of his game. He's dodging well. He's seeing the field well. He's getting other players involved because he understands the offense and he knows how to distribute the ball. And I think he's a very good rider, which is, for attackman, a lot of people don't focus on that, but he really gets after it in the ride. And it's just a very complete player, and he's playing extremely well for us.
Next, we'll go to Andrew Crane and then Mike McAdam after that.
Hi, John. Hope everything's going well. I wanted to ask a little bit about Jack Savage and just how he initially came on your radar back in Oregon.
We've had a few guys, Tucker Dordovic, Patrick Duffy. So we've got, a little bit of a pipeline there. And I believe he came in for a prospect days. so we were able to see him there, and he did a really nice job there, and he did well. His stats were pretty good for his club team and coming out of high school. So we think he's going to have a good future here. But that's basically how it came about.
And how does he maybe stand out when compared to somebody like Jacob or Danny? How does his maybe face-off tendencies differ from what your other two guys will do, at the X?
He's a bigger kid. He's probably 6'3", 190, 195 pounds. He's got quick hands for a big guy. And he actually was on the ball a couple more times against Notre Dame, and their guy, if you notice, they brought their second guy in who took, I think, 10 faceoffs more towards the end of the third, fourth quarter. But he gets the ball out fairly quickly. He can rake it too. So it's just he gives us a little different technique than the other guys. He's got quick hands for a big guy.
And then finally, you said post game that we'll definitely see Jack more going forward. Is that, more going forward? Does that mean earlier in the game, do you think, or just kind of whenever Jacob and Danny kind of struggle like they did against Notre Dame?
Yeah, we've always been fortunate with, if Jacob runs into somebody with, a technique that's beating him, Danny's a little different, than he. We've always had kind of a nice 1-2 punch there. And maybe we should have gone a little bit longer with Danny, but the score the way it was and how Jack's been going and doing in practice, just wanted him to get out there earlier to see what he could do. So he did pretty good. I think he was 6 for 17 on the day, and had he gotten a couple that were at his feet, he would have been 8 for 17, closer to that 50% mark. And that's, it's the first, that's a big game he's going in. We aren't winning faceoffs, we're behind, and we're asking this freshman to come in and get it done for us. So, good experience for him, and we'll see how he does going forward and how the other guys do.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mike?
Hey, John, can you walk us through a little bit of background on how Stephen Rafis wound up on your radar in the first place? And I guess one of the things that hurt him in the initial recruiting process was his size. Was that his lack of size? Was that any kind of red flag for you guys at all?
I'm trying to recall, because he came from Holy Cross. I think that it's a good question. I think somebody contacted Coach Rogers to say he was in the portal. And when, we kind of checked into him, I don't remember him out of high school. I don't remember seeing him anywhere. And then at the time, he, knowing that he was a lefty, we were in some need there. So being left-handed and just looking at all the points he scored in high school, he got to be a decent player, being able to score that much in high school. So there was a need for him at the time, and it all worked out. Fortunately, he chose Syracuse coming out of the portal.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Lindsay and then Roshan.
I would like your thoughts. A couple years ago, after the Albany-Syracuse game, it was planned to have the next Albany-Syracuse game in Albany. That was last year, and of course that didn't happen. And now this year, with lack of fans and COVID, games back here. But I'm just curious, do you think that next year you'll be perhaps playing in Albany?
I think so. I think it'll generate a lot of interest, especially in that area, and not a bad trip for people from Syracuse to go out there. That's a nice. I believe we'd be playing in the stadium. It's a nice stadium. It's good for a lacrosse game, and I think we could put a lot of fannies in the seats for that game.
So this year was strictly COVID related. It wasn't like, you changed your mind about going or anything like that.
Yeah, we talked with Scott, and the fact that there wouldn't be, the whole point of getting out there was to, draw some interest to, from the area in a big game. I think I saw them once on Carolina. It was a rainy night, but they had a great crowd for that, bringing the Tar Heels in town. So, And again, I think even more people for us because we probably bring more home, our fans from this area. So it could be an exciting evening there.
And then part two is it's never too early to start looking toward the end of the season. After this game, you've got 3 tough ACC games in a row. U.S. Lacrosse Magazine had an interesting story about the tournament. What's it going to look like? How many teams will be home sites the first game? What's going to be a little bit of uncertainty, and you're kind of, at a point in the season where you need to get out in a winning streak here. Just your thoughts about this home stretch and some of the uncertainties heading into the tournament overall. How do you view that?
Well, I've been doing this for a little bit, and you can't start trying to figure it out too early because, every year I've seen similar things where things can come down to that last weekend. And, so we've just got to focus on our next opponent. And that's all we can do. You can't, I can't get my crystal ball out here and try to figure things out. You kind of tend to lose your mind.
Right.
Everything, and when everything changes from week to week. So we'll see. We're just going to focus on Albany right now. Got a short week to prepare for them. Obviously coming off a big loss. So in some ways, nice to get out there and play again quickly so we can try to get the last loss behind us.
All right, thanks.
Yep.
Roshan?
Coach, I had the chance to talk with a couple face-off academy guys, and they were kind of talking about the moment when they changed the face-off rules was very frustrating for Jacob Phelps, just because he's been doing something one way his whole life, and he suddenly has to change. Do you remember what he said to you back in June about that?
I think at first I think like all the guys were maybe a little, frustrated with the change. But I think as he practiced it over the summer, I think he felt more comfortable with it. So I think any of the face-off guys, especially the better ones, when they were winning with the old technique, all of a sudden you're going to change things on them when they've been trained for a period of time doing things one way and a knee down and so on. That I think they were all frustrated with it, but I think as time has gone on, they've seen that they could have success with the new rules. The kind of the frustrating part for me is the rules were put in place to make it more of a 50-50. And it seems like this year more than ever, the upper echelon of the face-off guys are more dominant than they have been in the past. So to have these rules put in place to try to achieve one thing and have it achieve the opposite, I'm sure it's frustrating for the rules committee also.
Trey and then Brian.
Coach, I asked a little bit about a couple weeks ago with Stony Brook and the America East. I wanted to ask about similar opponents. You guys took down Vermont and Stony Brook. Albany, on the other hand, lost to both Vermont and Stony Brook this season. What do similar opponents have any effects for you and your squad, especially coming up this Thursday?
What I'm kind of missing your question.
So Vermont and Stony Brook, they beat Albany this year. You guys, yes, they beat Albany. You guys took down Vermont and Stony Brook. Do similar opponents have any effects with this game coming up on Thursday?
Maybe in certain things, like we probably, Tommy Costanza works with our face-off guys. I think he's probably watched, having gone against an opponent like Vermont and their face-off guys, and knowing what their strengths are to kind of look and see how they did against Albany. So I think certain aspects, I don't know if the team in general, but certain aspects, Pat will look at what their tendencies are defensively and see if they can compare them like that, if there are any similarities. And same thing with Coach Rogers on offense. Like I said, in certain aspects of the game, but maybe not overall.
And so without Nanticook, there's still Jacob Patterson. There's still Graydon Hogg. What do you have planned on the defensive side to take these two guys down, even without Nanticook on the attacking side?
Yeah, well, we're still watching them. We're hoping that our matchups are good. You've got to. They run a pretty good two-man game, and they're pretty good off the ball too. So if we were to have, if we were able to cover them in a lot of spots one-on-one, then that's certainly going to help our cause, because now we can focus a little bit more off the ball and try not to get backdoored or beat off a pick off the ball. So we'll see. We're going to have to adjust. I thought the same thing against Notre Dame, and it didn't really. Our shorties got picked on pretty good, and we were a little too slow to go against them. So we've got to be prepared that if they do dodge us, we've got to be prepared to help out. But I'd like to see, kind of like to see where their strengths are. Got another day to watch, another day to practice yet.
That's all I got, Coach. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ryan?
Hey, Coach, I got two questions, both kind of dive into different topics. So I'll ask the first. The first is, what are your thoughts on Drake's performances the last few games? And when you struggle at the face-off, what kind of strain does that put on the goalie and the defensive unit as a whole? And how do you grade his performance when those struggles are happening?
Yeah, I think it's, I think he was okay. Obviously some of the shots you just goalies don't have a chance, when they're standing on the doorstep. And then, just the number of opportunities they had. We played so much defense, especially for 3 periods, in Notre Dame's case especially. And then again, I think we were able to score because they had some more turnovers in the first quarter. They were kind of played fast, and then when they started to play slower, it made us play more defense. So I think it's tough. And they had some good shooters on top of it all. They did get a couple from the outside that pinged the corners. So I think with the amount of defense we had and how they, where they were getting their shots from, any ACC team, when they have the ball that much, they're gonna score. But I thought he did okay. It wasn't his best game.
And then second is more of a recruiting question. It was alluded to earlier, but you guys have had a lot of success recruiting on the West Coast, most notably in Oregon, but also California, Washington State, Tucker in Oregon being the most notable one. Are you seeing a growth in popularity in that region for the game? And then, what's appealing about recruiting out there?
I don't know. Maybe I guess that since others from that area have come to Syracuse, maybe there's a certain amount of comfort with that. When they go home, if they've had a good experience here, then, and I think generally, when you're from areas like that, if you hear of if you're from Oregon and you hear players from Oregon playing on certain teams, then you probably tend to follow those teams more. So that maybe that has some play. In Tucker's case, I think that Ryan Powell had a club group out there was doing clinics and spending a lot of time there. And that's originally how I knew about Tucker, was through Ryan Powell and, being part of his group. So, and then, again, just since there's been a little bit of a chain there, coming from the West Coast.
Do you see room for that region of the country to kind of, increase increase popularity of the sport in the coming years?
Yes, I do. I think that the growth is more and more, and I think Ryan Powell was probably one of the Johnny Appleseeds out there, and helped it grow. And some others are. It's a lot of the club teams now are becoming national, and that's an area where you're going to see the club teams grow even more.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Got time for a couple more. We'll start with Mark Singelis.
Hey, John, with Camden Hay, when he switched his commitments, did that come as a surprise when he did it, or not so much because of the family connections over at UAlbany?
Well, I think given the family situation there, it was a little bit of surprise because we weren't that far away, but then I know that he, with everything going on at home there, that it was probably comfortable for him to make that decision.
Last one, we'll go to Roshan.
Coach, with Jacob, his one of his face-off academy coaches was kind of saying that these performances against Notre Dame, against Duke are bad days, and that's what he was calling them. I guess what do you say to Jacob when you got to pull him or you got to bench him after a bad day?
Well, we basically, pretty obvious, right? If he's not winning them, we go to our second option. And I noticed on the sidelines that when Danny was out there, Jacob was his biggest fan, and whenever Danny came off, Jake was telling him what the other guy did or what he saw, and he was kind of coaching him up. And even when Jack was out there, so I think he understands, and you just try to keep the confidence up, and then everybody, the face-off guys will tell you some guys just match up better against other guys, and he understands that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you very much for hopping on with us today, Coach. Meaty, we'll see you guys Thursday.